Hi there, welcome to Season 2 of Ask the Experts. I'm John Flora. This is the program where we take your question and fan it out to our panel of experts across the fruited plain to get you some help. We've been doing this now for a little over a year, and all of the previous episodes have been recorded. They're on our website at nacmbcs.org, and I urge you to take a look at them. Most of them are in the 10 to 15 minute in length category, and they have some really good information for them, and I think you'll find it helpful. For this second year, we're going to try something a little different, and it all starts with a conversation I had about a year ago with one of our members who was letting me know she was retiring, and she was a little nervous about what that had in store for her. She wasn't quite totally convinced that her planning was adequate. And she had some dreams, but she wasn't sure how it was all going to work out. So over the subsequent months, I heard from a number of other people who were also preparing for the next chapter in their lives, and were scratching their heads a little bit about what that might be. A few were totally well prepared and planned it out and thought they were all ready to go. But most were still kind of scratching their head about what the future might hold. For most, at least initially, money wasn't necessarily the topic of conversation, so we're not going to dwell on that too much. But as time has gone on and the economy has tightened up, that is becoming an issue, and more people that I talk with are thinking about hanging around a little bit longer or looking for ways to make some extra income in their retirement years. So we're going to talk about all that with our two guests. One is Roger Benford. Roger was Director of Credit for NC Machinery, the Caterpillar dealer for the Northwest. And the other is the first person I talked to about this, Pauline Vandersloot, who is the credit manager for Mutual Materials in Bellevue, Washington. Roger's been retired now for a couple of years, although he did a brief stint with us as our interim collections manager, and we're deeply grateful for the time he gave us. And Pauline was getting ready to retire, but her company asked her to stay a little bit longer. So she's got another 2 years to go. And we're going to hear from both of them about their experiences in preparing for the next chapter, if you will, and get their advice on what you might do to get yourself ready to go. So with that, let's talk with them and see what they have to say. So greetings, my friends. Nice to see you both. It's been a while, and it's always nice to catch up. So Pauline Vandersloot is our credit manager for Mutual Materials based in Bellevue, and Roger Benford was with NC Machinery and the Harnish Group for how many years, Roger? 17. So we have two good veterans here. One is retired, kind of, and one is still working. This whole process began a little over a year ago when Pauline and I were talking about her plans, and since then her plans have changed a little bit. So Pauline, welcome, and can you tell us a little bit about what you were thinking a year ago related to your retirement planning, and then what's happening at this very moment?
Well, a year ago I was thinking, I want to retire. I want to make sure that I was debt free at the time, and starting to figure out what I was going to do during my retirement. Well, for me, I do art. I like to paint and draw, and plus I like to make greeting cards. So that's what I plan to do when I retire. And then I was going through all the obstacles of, okay, what am I going to do with them? Am I going to sell them, make some extra cash? So, I have money for supplies. So recently I did sign up for SD, but my SD shop is kind of has cobwebs and it's a little echoey in there right now.
That's okay. You have to start someplace.
Yeah. and my grandchildren have kind of pushed me a little bit, whom are avid artists. So So I'm kind of working it little by little when I have time.
So
So
when we last spoke, you had a date specific to leave Mutual, and that has
yeah,
changed.
yeah, I was gonna leave this year, but I'm staying now for a couple more years, mainly because one, it's hard to find people, and two, I'm wanted to leave some kind of legacy here at Mutual, which we're still working on. You know, we're trying to get a portal system in here and make things work a lot easier. Um, so we're still working on that. And I talked to our president, and I just agreed to stay a couple more years.
So yours was the first call about retirement that I had. And then subsequent to that, it's probably not quite a dozen, but call it 10 different people, most
Yeah.
of our good veterans. And it kind of ranged between having their life planned out to the other end being, I'm going to retire, but oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to do, and I'm panicked about it. Rarely was money part of the discussion.
Yeah.
It sounded to me like most people had saved pretty well. However, as we've gotten into the current economy, that's changed a little bit. So for
Yeah.
you, did that have a bearing on any of this discussion?
Oh, definitely, for sure, because, you know, I'm just as worried as the next person. My grandma lived till she was 96 years old. You know, what if I live that long as well? You know, how long is my money going to last as things keep getting higher and higher in prices? I mean, I bought a latte today. Before COVID, it was only $5. I had to pay $8 for this today. It was like, are you kidding me? I went to the grocery store last Friday. I looked at the stuff that we bought. Normally it would have been $300. I spent $400. You know, so it's things have gone up, and I get it why it's gone up. You know, gas has gone up, transportation, everything's gone up. So lack of materials, supplies, whatever. I mean, I work for a manufacturer. I know what's going on.
Yeah, well, just as an aside, I spent an extra week in Hawaii after our forum and went to the grocery store there and bought, you know, the usual family stuff. And when I got home, I drew the short straw to go to the grocery store the day after we got back. And I was really shocked at what I paid. And so, just being the kind of person I am, I came back and logged onto the Safeway in Honolulu, or one of them, and started pricing out everything I'd bought at the Thriftway on Vashon Island. And everything in Honolulu was cheaper.
Yeah.
Which I thought, it wasn't by a lot, but when you added it up, there was some money there. And
Yeah.
I was under the impression that Hawaii was so expensive, which it is, but so too is Seattle.
Yeah.
And so it's something to think about. So, Mr. Benford, you've been sort of retired for 2 years. And I say sort of because you've done your interim gig with us as the interim credit manager and helped us find your replacement, which was hugely helpful. But you had plans going into this, and you started working on them quite a while ago. So tell that story, if you would.
All right. First, I want to tell you that Grandma and Grandpa are sitting on the front porch in their rocking chairs, and there's some cars going by and some people talking. And Grandpa looks over at Grandma and he says, "You know, dear, I'm proud of you." A little bit later, Grandma looks over at Grandpa and she goes, "Yeah, and I'm tired of you too."
We'll charge an entertainment cover charge for this morning.
I am retired. This is my third official retirement after I left the NACM, which is, you know, if I even approach being qualified for an Ask the Experts, having Pauline's same concerns, and then being on this side of retirement, I know a lot of things that I was clueless about beforehand. And one of the things, and Pauline just mentioned it, was our collective legacy as credit professionals. And I, for one, devoted an inordinate amount of time making sure all the policies and procedures and processes were up to date. And to be honest with you, if there's one thing that I wish, other than understanding Medicare a little better, it was that I looked forward a little bit more. And Pauline, you mentioned artwork. I spent 8 months on this painting behind me, the first 8 months of my retirement. But I also spent, 2 years trying to get all of the stuff in the credit house in order for the Harness Group and NC. And the guy that took over my job had his own agenda. So I'm not saying you should abandon the legacy, but retirement's just like a marriage or anything else. It involves two things: balance and time management. And part of that is looking toward your future and what you're going to do, in terms of financially, in terms of time management, in terms of understanding Medicare. And, Medicare, for instance, does not cost the same for everybody. It's based on your last 2 years of earnings. So right out of the chute, most of us pay a huge amount of money for Medicare on a monthly basis. But then after the salary goes away and Social Security kicks in, a year or two later, we're paying a lot less. The other thing is that, and I say this and my wife says, oh, don't say this in the training session, but Medicare only covers stuff I don't care about. And the reason I won't care about it is because I'll be in a coma. The stuff I care about, dental, prescriptions, eye exams, I got to pay for out of pocket. Now they have a fancy name for it, but basically that's what it means, is that all those little things, part C, D, E, F, G, or whatever, I have to cover.
So Roger, let me interrupt for just a second. I've had some members at some of our recent meetings ask me if we would do a Medicare forum for our members to explain what it's all about. And my first reaction was, that's not exactly what we do at NACM. However, I do know people. And so we are going to be doing that, because the alphabet soup that goes with Medicare is very confusing.
Yeah.
And you can end up spending a lot of money or not spending it correctly. And so we're going to set that up here sometime in the next couple of months, as soon as I can get the guy I want to get his calendar. And we'll see how that goes. I think it might be interesting for a lot of our older members who are cogitating on the whole retirement thing and how do you make it all work. The one question I have for you on the financial piece: when did you start pulling Social Security, or have you?
I just started.
Okay.
And I want to talk about financing, but let me make a comment about the Medicare thing. First, I'd be happy to serve on that educational process. And most of the plan coordinators will work for free. They will appear and give you their expertise, and they won't try to sway you toward their plan or any other one. They'll just kind of paint the framework that you get to fill in. So just keep that in mind as you go forward.
Will do. Thank you.
Now, in terms of financial analysis, your Social Security and when you're going to get it and how much of that's going to be dedicated to Medicare is important. But really, for most of us, the most important thing is managing your 401k. And the two things I did before I retired was, a couple of years in advance, I maxed out what I could donate, not what the company would match, but what I could put in. And I also became more aware of pulling back my investments to all the stocks that I had were in S&P 500, and then I had bonds, and then I had cash, and then I had some money in I call it MJB because it's in a coffee can in the yard. But my point is, as you retire, you don't want to put all your money on Roulette Black. You don't want to open up a new store in the Tacoma Mall as an investment. You need to take your earnings and find a way to live off them. And if you can make interest on it at the same time, more power to you. but really, when you look at your 401k, when you look at your savings accounts, when you look at your investments, you also need to talk to financial professionals. I mean, your banker is one, your 401k management source is one. You could make your own balance sheet on what you can spend versus what you'll have available and how long it'll last you. That's just an estimate, of course. None of us really knows what the future will be. But again, start moving toward a little bit more conservative thinking financially.
So, Pauline, let's go back to you for a minute. Part of this discussion, I mean, we're covering quite a lot of territory here, but the real question at the outset was, what are you going to do with yourself when you retire? You know, it's glamorous to say, I'm going to walk the beach every day. I'm going to play golf. I'm going to do whatever. I'm going to play with the grandkids, but you can only do any of that for so long. And then what brings meaning to you? What, you know, how do you contribute to humankind, however deep you want to get with this whole thing? But what is your thought process about that?
Well, you know, there's lots of things. Yeah, I can do my art, but I'm not going to make $1 million at it, for one. But number two, there's other things you can do. You can go to nursing homes and visit senior people. I did that with a group of kids in the Legion of Mary. We took them to the nursing home. These people loved having visitors. They don't get any visitors. Go sit with somebody. I'm actually thinking about putting my name in to sit with somebody that's passing away, so they don't have to be alone. There's a lot of people that are in a room and they're dying by themselves, when it'd be nice to have somebody to hold their hand while they're going through this process. And forgive me for putting religion in this, but praying for them, saying the rosary with them, you know, just being with one human to another as they go through that process to the next life. So there's a lot of people like that out there. There's also things you can do. You can volunteer at schools. Schools need volunteers. There's all kinds of volunteer little things that you can do out there. You're not going to make any money at it, but you're going to do something with your life. You're not going to sit around and watch TV all day, or sit on the couch, become a couch potato, or, you know, just let your life go for nothing. You'll get bored with that and you'll start getting depressed.
So it sounds like you've got a number of these things in mind to do.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I keep pushing my other half. I keep pushing Helmut and saying, why don't you go visit the nursing home? You know, play around with golf one day, then go visit the nursing home. Because he's retired. He's home every day waiting for me to get home.
That's appropriate. You know, I think Lewis and Clark called it a voyage of discovery. And it seems like you'd have a lot more time to manage, but you don't really. I mean,
oh no.
Yeah, most of us at age 60 something, our lives are full. We just haven't had time to sort of spot check them because we've been busy working, right? But if you volunteer to help out with the grandkids, I mean, they might have school, they certainly have some sort of schedule. And as a grandparent, you can't just pull a plug and go to Florida for a month and say, oh, by the way, I committed, but now I'm not committed.
Yeah.
And it's really the same with charity work. A lot of places, maybe not retirement homes, but there are a lot of places that if you're going to volunteer, you're going to volunteer on their schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, there are still all the things that we're saddled with in our working life. We carry them forward with ourselves into retirement. Like Pauline says, the easy thing to do is sit on the couch and watch John Wayne movies for a month like I did. But at some point you have to look on the calendar and go, okay, right here is when I start the rest of my life. And I'd love to tell you that it's all about painting. It isn't. It's all about the activities. Some days you just sit there and go, what am I going to do today? And other days are kind of like today. I've got a home inspection in Florida, and I've got this commitment I made. I've got to talk to our attorney this afternoon. So it's a bit of a variable schedule. But so is work. Some days you eat the bear and some days the bear eats you.
Yeah, I hear people say, oh, when I retire, I'm gonna go do all these things with my house, clean this, clean that. Well, you only have so much you can do to your house. There's so much repair you can do, so much cleaning you can do, and then it's over. Then what are you gonna do?
Yeah, unless you love your kids deeply, don't plan a 50-year renovation.
Well, yeah, and if you've got kids scattered all over.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, and there's only so much traveling you can do.
Yeah, right. No, it's, I think, I don't want to say he's my hero because he isn't, but the retirement idea that crosses our minds is like D.B. Cooper. You jump out of the plane with a good parachute and 2 bags of money. And unfortunately, that's no more a reality for us than it was for him. It's a struggle no matter what you do and how you do it. If you don't, if you're not alarmed by the lack of income after you retire, and that doesn't spur you back to part-time work or interim work, then boredom may do it. But you have to sort of include that as your potential future, that you'll be busy doing something.
Yeah, and part-time work is, as you were saying that, I kept thinking, our drugstore is always looking for part-time people to work. I mean, there's a lady there way older than me that works in the pharmacy counter and helps people out, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the place where I bought property in Florida, they say, the radio announcer came on and said, there's a lot of blue hairs down here, but those aren't blue hairs, those are their parents.
So Roger, in your you sent some thoughts to me prior to this, and one of the things you talked about was writing a journal.
Yeah.
And over the last several years, we've had our good friend David Brook, the gratitude guy, speak at a number of our events or done our webinars or what have you, and he has his gratitude journal, which you can write in every day. And unfortunately, I just gave away my last copy, so I need to buy a new one. But talk a little bit about keeping a journal, if you would, because I find that to be a really useful.
Well, I read a little sort of 2-sentence excerpt from my journal, but the first thing I would tell you is it's kind of like a New Year's resolution. If you tell yourself you're going to do it every day, you probably fail. So just sort of don't miss any of the moments where your grandson's blowing the petals off a dandelion, or something big is happening. You know, the first day of school and graduations kind of take care of themselves, but there's lots of little moments. I was out in the garage one day, and I wrote this after my trip to the garage. Your career was your former life and you've moved on. It's not more complicated than that. My final office nameplate said, Roger Benford, Corporate Credit Manager. During that life, I accomplished great things, and I still do. Just ask my grandsons. I was out in the garage putting my bike away, and I noticed a nameplate from decades ago, covered in soot and cobwebs, but with a job description that remains fairly accurate. Roger Benford, Manager. And I guess I'll manage.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so don't, because time is moving slower, my point would be, don't miss the passage of it. You have an opportunity to do things you couldn't dream of doing during your work life.
So it sounds like both of you have taken time to think about what's important to you, so you could be selective about what you're going to be involved with, but also be open to unexpected things that come along that also might benefit from your engagement. Accurate statement?
Yeah, I would say so.
I think Pauline mentioned one of the points when she said her husband's already retired. You know, one thing about retiring that I am a believer of, and you know, a lot of people will disagree with me, is if you have the option to not retire together, do it at different times, because acclimating is hard enough for one person. It's really difficult if you're continually trying to both be on the same page with all of this newfound freedom.
And I like that, because when I go home, I don't do housework. He does it all.
Yeah,
Yeah,
You're spoiled.
right.
I am. The only thing I do is laundry and cook.
I've been cutting my wife's hair for 2 years. I keep waiting for the $44 payment that never comes.
Well, you know, my mom retired from teaching when she was 65 and then went on to do a whole bunch of work with special ed kids and people that needed help with reading down in the Tacoma area. And she was involved with the art museum and all sorts of stuff. And my dad worked until he was 75 or 76. And his first day home, he said, "So what are you doing today?" And she sat him down and said, "Let's get something straight, bucko. I've got a full schedule. I'm not here to entertain you and have lunch every day." And so he immediately got himself active in some stuff, and he didn't miss a beat. But that little shake was what he needed. And sadly, he's gone, but mom's 101 and not active anymore, but she's still with us. So that's good. She's had a good life. So,
you know, during my first retirement, I wrote down my agenda for the day. My wife came up and looked at it and she goes, "Wow, there's really not a lot going on there."
you don't have the day timer with 15-minute increments anymore?
I think she was referring to mental flaws.
Well, that's good. So with that, I'm going to ask, do either of you have parting thoughts on this subject? And also, I guess, what are you most looking forward to in the next couple of years?
I am looking forward to retiring. I'm looking to plan my room a little bit. I'm looking forward to maybe taking a few trips so I can go see my grandkids. I'm looking forward to taking a trip. I think Helen and I are going to take one more trip to Germany to see his family. I'm looking forward to those different little things, and I think if I can help it, we'll make 2 trips to Europe, but we'll see what happens.
You got time.
Yeah, we have time. We have all the time.
Mr. Benford?
Well, I don't like flying. I'm not sure I like traveling. I still have a pretty brisk metabolism, so I'm not yet acclimated to retirement, but I am appreciating the journey. You know, as time goes by, one of the things you realize in retirement is, you know, I got a lot less runway to land my plane on in terms of time available. And it makes you more conscious of how important that is, because that's all you're leaving with is the time you used here. You're not taking your art, you're not taking your policies, you're not taking your sweater collection, nothing. The only thing you got is how well you use your time. So use it well.
So I actually do have one last question. Roger, you've got a home in Florida that you got because of family reasons mostly.
Right.
And I'm just curious to know if either of you are thinking of, you know, continuing to have the Puget Sound area as home base and then have a second home someplace where you spend a good portion of the year, or not.
No, we're staying right here. We're not. We don't plan on purchasing another home unless we can find a reasonable home within our area that we live in. That's one level. Okay. But other than that, we're staying put.
Okay. I've been married for 44 years, and our home in Florida is 800 square feet. I think I could say with some sense of authority that if we spent any considerable time there, we'd be divorced. So the gist of it is that that's going to remain a kind of a getaway property where we don't have to pay the hotel or whatever. We can just go stay there. And we're not really big VRBO fans, so it may remain vacant some of the year. But this is our home, and our kids were raised here, and it'll always be our home base.
That's helpful, because I know a lot of people think about that idea, and unfortunately, most of the places you'd want to go, at least in the United States, have gotten very expensive. And so to have a home here and a home there is hard to afford anymore. But also sometimes just being home is a good thing to do. So.
Yeah, one of these sessions on budget and planning, and having maybe an economist talk about the realities of what's conservative and what isn't, would be a suggestion going forward too.
Okay.
So there's just an endless list of things we can still pay attention to, retired or not.
Mm-hmm. Well, we will. I'll take that into account as I continue to put these together. We're going to do our regular Ask the Experts, 10, 15-minute blasts on a given credit topic. But I've been really surprised at how many people want this extra kind of help, and I think that's something we can do. It's appropriate, and we've got some good resources available. So I appreciate your help today, and we'll look forward to seeing you both again soon.
Awesome.
Thank you.
See you
Take
guys.
care.